Hey, everybody. So I'm supposed to talk about augmented reality. And 20 minutes is a short time for augmented reality because it's a very broad topic. But on the other hand, it's good because it focuses us on the most important things. This is why the title of this talk is the essence of augmented reality. My personal background is technology, so I'm a technologist. But I have always been on the applications side, and it so happened that applications, in a lot of applications are games. So I have been involved in two multi-unicorn games, and that is Pokemon Go and Roblox. So with this experience comes questions. Like, why is it popular? Right? Why is Pokemon Go popular? And to answer that question, it is probably, we first have to understand what AR is. And it's probably a little bit different from what you, at the moment, have in mind. So hopefully by the end of this talk, and you can see what I think is the essence of AR and what the important thing is for AR. Hopefully you get something new here. Okay. Works. So let's get started. When the majority of people think about AR, they actually think about the related technologies for AR. And as I would often say, if you look at the technology side of AR, it would be like AR equals A plus R. So there is the augmentation side, and there is the reality side. So on the augmentation side, most people think of augmentations as primarily being visual. So visual augmentations is about delivering photons to people's eyes. And in that regard, you have goggles and headsets like what you see here with the HoloLens 2. Or you can do AR with phones and tablets, and in that case, if you do that, it's not immersive, but it has its own merits. I mean, it's readily available, right? So on the reality side, we're talking about essentially understanding the world around you. So there's localization technology, there's a tracking technology, which figure out where your device is position, orientation, and then there's image understanding technology that derives a semantic understanding from the images. These are things like object segmentation and object detection, and all this would combine to enable the placement of virtual objects in the real world, and that's what's commonly understood as AR. So there are many frontiers in those things. For example, on the augmentation side, there are challenges in optical design, right? There are trade-offs among the clarity, the field of view, the form factor, weight. And there are, a very big section of neuroscience that we have to understand in order to produce good devices. And on the reality side, there are many open questions, such as global localization, what people refer to as AR cloud, and also whether you can make use of AI chips to accelerate semantic understanding and at a lower power, et cetera, et cetera. So there are many, many topics like this, but that's not what I'm going to talk about today. Okay? If I go through these and offer my personal opinion, it would take hours. But more importantly, it doesn't seem to me like these things are the most important thing in AR. So that gets into what I think is fundamentally what AR is, right? So I think AR fundamentally is about stories and narratives. So you could say like this is like a humanity-centric view of AR as versus a technology-centric view. So AR is the layers of stories and narratives on top of the real world. So it's about the overlays, the content of the overlays on top of the real world. So if this sounds a little abstract, it's exactly because it's more fundamental, but it's not hard to understand with a simple example. So say you have an idea that you want to discuss with me. Okay, so if we are face to face, you can just tell me about it, right? And we can have a discussion. But if you're not face to face, maybe you send me an email, right? Or you give me a phone call and we can have a discussion on the phone. Or we can have a video conference, right? So the idea is the same, and it's looking for expression. But depending on the circumstances, depending on the availability of devices, you would pick a convenient way to express it, right? And so in that sense, the idea is more fundamental than the mechanisms or technology that you choose to express it with, right? So, make sense? Pretty simple. So if we take the stories, narratives view, if we take this angle of AR, then a few things become immediately apparent. So for one, it means that AR is ultimately about information. It's not about presentation, right? So it's just like the idea can be expressed in many different ways, the same idea, right? And also it's, secondly, it's not exclusively associated with visual representations, right? But there are already many talks about like audio-based augmented reality, and that's entirely fine. That's a very interesting topic. However, I'm heading for something more radical, because the presentation doesn't have to be digital either. It may not have to be associated with a computer or device. Okay. So let's consider a very low-tech form of delivering a narrative on top of the real world. Very low-tech, right? So novels that are set in the real world have been fulfilling that role for thousands of years. So let's look at that. So this picture is my copy of John Steinbeck's short novels. So anybody knows John Steinbeck? Raise your hand if you know John Steinbeck. Yay! 2. That's not too bad. Maybe 3. I think I saw the one over there. Okay, so John Steinbeck is a writer and he's a Nobel laureate in literature. So he's a big shot. So among the stories in this book, the one that is of a lot of local significance and influence is titled Cannery Row. Okay, so that story is set on the street of the same name, Cannery Row, in Monterey, California. So I think most of the people here are local, right? So Monterey is south of us from here. So and Steinbeck lived and worked in the Monterey area pretty much all his life. So here we show where Cannery Row, the street, is by zooming into it. As I said, it's just south of us on the Monterey Peninsula. And the Cannery Row Street, which I marked out here in red, is a street right by the sea in the city of Monterey. If you have ever been to Monterey, you must have been on this street, right? But if you haven't, then you should go. It's a beautiful place with a lot of history. So this is what the street looks like over time. Okay, I think these are pictures from the 1930s, the 1970s, and I think the bottom two are fairly recent, right? So all this is saying, like, this place is real. It's a real place in the real world. So John Steinbeck, the writer, took the street and wrote a novel, which he published in 1945, right? So that's the man right there. In the novel, the characters lived and worked along the street. So the street is real, but the characters and their deeds are, of course, fictional. And like any other fiction and novels that are set in the real world, the book constructs an overlay on top of the real world location, right? And by the way, the picture of this book is the first edition, so it's vintage now. If you want a copy, it would be like $1,000 on eBay. Actually, the picture is from eBay. So what's the story like? So these illustrations, very nice ones, are by a fan of the book. He's an artist, and he did this just for fun. So character-wise, there is Li Chong, right, who is the owner and operator of the neighborhood grocery store. And there is Doc, who is a marine biologist and the smartest guy on Cannery Row, right? And to quote, he can listen to all kinds of nonsense and change it for you into some kind of wisdom. He's a very popular guy. And then there's Mac, who's the leader of a group of essentially homeless people. Right? We can't possibly cover the story here, but you should read the book. It's classical Steinbeck, very good. But one thing I want to point out is that the story and the writing is the only thing here, right? I mean, there's nothing else, right? So this can be contrasted with some of the things we have today, like a fancy AR demo, which has no story, right? So it's not surprising that such a demo would be tried once and quickly forgotten, right? Because there's no depth and there's no shelf life. Or by contrast, this book is practically immortal. It may even outlive the real location it is set in, right? It may outlive the physical world. I mean, think about that. This is a pretty amazing concept, right? So, so this building is the location of the Western biological laboratories in the book. In the real world, it's 800 Cannery Row. I mean, you can go there today to see it. 800 Cannery Row, and it's a real world name. It's only a little bit different than the name in the book. So the guy, the marine biologist who ran this place, is a friend of Steinbeck's. and he inspired the Doc character in the book. And actually, the book was dedicated to this friend. There's also a statue of this friend at a nearby intersection in Monterey. So, you see, reality and fiction, or reality and augmentation, are very tightly intertwined here. As a matter of fact, the whole street was not named such when Steinbeck wrote the book. It was called something like, the Ocean View Avenue, right? But the novel became so famous that the city renamed the street in 1958. That's why we have Cannery Row today, right? So it's a case of the virtual world, the fiction, the augmentation, whatever you call it, spilling over into reality, right? And it also demonstrates the power of exceptional story. So we have gone through John Steinbeck's Cannery Row fairly quickly, and the novel is definitely the most prominent story on that street. It is the street's namesake story, right? But as we implied before, there can be layers of narratives on top of the real world. So are there other stories on Cannery Row? And the answer is yes. And at this time, the audience is probably more familiar with it. But we didn't get 0 for John Steinbeck, so I think that's pretty good. Pokemon Go, right? So the game is available worldwide, right? And of course, it covers Cannery Row too, right? So this map is what the good people at CanneryRow.com produced for the Pokemon Go players on Cannery Row. We can't go through the narratives of the Pokemon franchise, but as a lot of you already know, I mean, it involves capturing, training, and battling, and the Pokemon franchise has a lot of depth in terms of ecology and biology of the creatures. So it's not just what it appears to be, etc. Okay, so what else? So it so happens that Niantic's first game, Ingress, is also available worldwide, and therefore it's available at a particular Cannery Row location. Right? So this story is entirely different. I mean, it's about a future time when a mysterious alien energy form is discovered and the human race is split about it. So there are people who want to embrace this matter and this force, and so they are the Enlightenment faction, right? They are green. And then there are other people who want to reject this form of energy, and that's the Resistance faction, and they are blue, right? They form teams and they battle each other by capturing portals, by doing fielding, etc., etc. We're not gonna get into that, right? But the thing is, over here, instead of like a Lee Chung and a Doc and a Mac, and instead of Pokemons, we're dealing with like aliens and exotic matter, right? And all this is overlaid on top of the same geographical location. These are like parallel universes. So in summary, we have 3 separate narratives onto the same geography we know as the Cannery Row, right? So if you look at this is, in my view, what AR is all about. It's about stories and the narratives. It's about parallel universes. We haven't talked about any of the technology elements such as maps, cell phones, tracking, goggles, but that's all right? And that's because those are secondary considerations from my point of view for the purpose of the talk today. It doesn't mean technology is not important, it's very important, and there's a lot to do, but the stories, the narratives, and the information are more fundamental for augmented reality and more long-lasting. So if you want something that lasts, you need these narratives, you need those stories. All right, so some quick points about what we have covered today. So AR is about narratives overlaid on top of the real world, right? And the delivery technologies would change over time, but the narratives are foundational. And novels are basically text-based augmented reality, right? That's a direct consequence of our theme today. And also augmentation can become reality itself if the narrative, if the story are really good, then it will turn around and affect the real world. Thank you. That's it.